Howdy folks, hope you've all had a good weekend and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. And I thought the news I was going to be leading with this week would have been the mammoth, like they were down for nearly an entire day, downtime over at Facebook last week. And of course all of Facebook's associated websites and apps like Instagram, etc. were also affected. But then Twitch said, hold my beer. Wow. So for those of you who hadn't heard, Twitch got hacked. And when I say Twitch got hacked, the scale of the data breach was astronomical. The first and most important thing that you need to do right now, if you haven't already, is go onto Twitch, change your password, and if you haven't already, enable two-factor authentication. And as soon as you've done that, if you're one of the vast majority of people who use the same password and log on for everything that they have a password and log on for, go to everywhere else where you use the same password that you used on Twitch, particularly if it's associated with the same email address, and change the passwords there, and if they give you the chance, also enable two-factor authentication there as well. When I started going on about this, I have no doubt that many of you were sitting there thinking, well, I don't stream on Twitch, so I don't really need to change my password. But hopefully now you're starting to get some inclination of just exactly how serious this could be for you personally. Things have been going from bad to worse for Twitch, because just a couple of weeks ago we had the news that people were having their Twitch accounts taken over, and the accounts were being used to hate spam chat in other people's live streams. And the affected accounts were of course banned. Twitch didn't care that it wasn't you actually doing it, that it was happening while you weren't even at the PC. Now, in the great scheme of things, this was only happening to a relatively small number of Twitch accounts that had been compromised. But in the wake of last week's mammoth Twitch hack, Twitch themselves released a statement where they were not actually able to definitely say for sure whether or not everybody who has a Twitch account had had their personal data breached. They said, you're probably okay. That does not, I mean, I don't know about you, but that doesn't inspire me with an awful lot of confidence. If Twitch in an official statement cannot definitely say that your login data is safe, change your login data. And if you use the same usernames, passwords and email addresses anywhere else, change them there too. In fact, now would be a really good time to pimp out a password manager. This wasn't going to be a sponsored episode of Mingles with Jingles, but I did a Nordpass integration 2 weeks ago, and it's still valid. So if you want a password manager, I can definitely recommend Nordpass. Now would seem like a really, really good time. Get your asses over to nordpass.com/jingles, use code JINGLES, and you get 74% off a 2-year Nordpass premium plan with an additional 4 months for free. I'm pretty sure the link is still good. I may actually end up getting myself into a little bit of bother with the marketing agency that I work with for these sponsored video integrations, because the contract that I actually signed with them was for Mingles with Jingles 2 weeks ago, which was a sponsored video. This one is not a sponsored video. But, well, whatever. Password manager is a good idea, particularly in light of what just happened at Twitch, so I'm quite happy to take the hit on that one. If it's useful for you, by all means, go ahead and use it. So, what exactly was it that got leaked over at Twitch? Well, the thing is, nobody really knows the full scale. I mean, it's pretty much as bad as it possibly could have been. Twitch basically got bulldozed. I mean, they got absolutely reamed. Hackers got away with taking Twitch's entire source code, including unreleased software such as a Steam-like game client going by the codename of Vapor, software development kits, financial reports, including how much the top streamers make, and it's a lot. And that, of course, is just what we know got taken, which is why Twitch is unable to categorically state yes or no whether or not your personal data is safe. At least 125 gigabytes of Twitch's most sensitive data got ripped without a single alarm being tripped, and the first time anybody knew about it was when the hackers dumped it all on 4chan. So now, anybody who wants access to that data, by now, has it, because it's freely available. I don't know if it still is, but it definitely was freely available on 4chan. which could allow them to expose other weaknesses in Twitch's infrastructure, and not just Twitch, because Twitch is owned by Amazon, which means Amazon could now, theoretically, also be vulnerable. And the fact that this was all just dumped up for grabs to anybody who wanted it, they didn't ask for ransom money, they just dumped it. That raises another potentially dangerous red flag, because whoever did this was not motivated by money. They were motivated by ideology, which either means it was done because somebody thought it needed to happen to Twitch, or just because some people like to see the world burn. And in light of that revelation, you might now very well be sitting there thinking, well, I don't need to change my passwords or enable two-factor authentication because you just said it wasn't financially motivated. The initial hack was not. But all of that data was dumped on 4chan. Anybody could have their hands on it by now. Anybody could now be using your email address and password and just going on a fishing expedition across all of the big websites just to see whether or not they can get lucky. So, I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but this is important and it needs repeating. If you have a Twitch account, change your password. If you use the same password and associated email address on any other website, change it there too, and enable two-factor authentication. Well, anyway, while we're on the subject of people getting up to no good online, has anybody played or watched people stream on Twitch the new, I think it's an Amazon game, New World? It's a new MMO. I've not bothered with it. I watched previews and it didn't really interest me, and then I'm so sick to death of MMOs. Actually, I'll explain to you why I am so sick to death of MMOs. So, as many of you are probably aware, I am something of a World of Warcraft veteran. I used to be a fairly hardcore player. We would raid in my guild, first 40-man raid groups, and then as each expansion came out and the size of raids changed, 25-man heroic raid groups 3 nights a week. Not completely hardcore, but we got a couple of server firsts. You know, we were a reasonably good raiding guild, and it started basically turning into a second job. So I stepped down from raiding, but I still kept playing World of Warcraft, although these days I'm just a filthy casual. Now, I appreciate that many of you don't play World of Warcraft, and many more of you probably never played an MMO at all, so I'll try to explain what recently happened to me in World of Warcraft that completely soured me for MMOs. And I'll try to explain it without using any of the language that you would need to be a World of Warcraft player specifically, or an MMO player in general to understand, so bear with me. So, World of Warcraft Shadowlands, the latest expansion. I think it came out in November last year. It's been nearly a year now. And there have been a couple of major content patches in that length of time. So what happens in World of Warcraft every time there's a new content patch? In order to keep everybody on the hamster wheel, they have to provide some kind of incentive to get people running through all of the new dungeons and raids that have been included in the latest content patch. And the simplest and most obvious way of doing that is to have better gear drop for your character in those dungeons and raids. Which means that every time there's a content patch, the maximum item level, or how good your gear is, increases, with the latest and best gear only being available in the new raids and dungeons. Yeah, makes sense. Now that means that the challenge associated with these new dungeons and raids is also going to be tougher, and not everybody is going to have cleared all of the existing content in the previous patch and have all of the best gear from that patch. Some people might need a bit of help gearing up to the entry requirements of those new raids and dungeons, and so every patch they introduce what they call catch-up gear. So this is character equipment and gear that you can get just usually from doing daily quests, which serves two purposes. All of the filthy casuals like me have something to look forward to that they can do in the hour or two that they grind through when they log on every day without having to go through all of the raids and dungeons, and still be able to get some gear that's better than what they had, just from doing the kind of daily quests that you do when you log on just for an hour or two every day. And there are new daily quest areas to support this, so there's a bit of a change of scenery there for the filthy casuals as well. Plus, those people who do want to go through the new endgame content can get certain gear slots where maybe they were a little bit lacking filled pretty quickly just from doing these daily quests as well. So everybody's happy, yeah? So for me, as a filthy casual who only played an hour or two every day at most, here's how it worked. Actually getting the new catch-up gear in all of your existing equipment slots is actually fairly simple, quick and straightforward, because obviously they want to keep you hooked. The grind comes in improving and upgrading that gear, and it's locked behind two different walls. And this is nothing new, this is the way it's worked in, well, every World of Warcraft patch and expansion for at least the last 8 or 9 years. First, they introduce a new faction, and these are the guys who sell you the upgrades to the gear. But they will only sell you upgrades up to a certain point depending on what your reputation with that faction is. So you have to grind reputation with this faction through logging in every day and doing daily quests. Now, I didn't have a problem with that because I'm a filthy casual. Logging in for a couple of hours every day and doing the daily quests is basically what I used to do, just to keep myself occupied. So you start off at neutral reputation with this faction, and it requires, 3,000 reputation to go from neutral to friendly. And when you reach friendly reputation, new upgrades become available. Hooray! But then to get to the next reputation level, going from friendly to honoured, it's going to take 6,000 reputation, so it's going to take twice as long. But once you reach honoured, further upgrades become available. And then to get to the next reputation level, revered, it's going to take 12,000 reputation points. So it just keeps doubling, until eventually, after an additional 21,000 reputation grind, you reach exalted and the best upgrades become available. And if you think, that sounds like it's going to take a really long time, you're absolutely right. It's an MMO. Everything in an MMO takes a really long time, particularly if, like me, you're a filthy casual. But I was okay with that because I wasn't in a rush to get anywhere. I knew that as long as I just kept logging in every day and doing the daily quests on at least one character, eventually I'd get there. I wasn't in a rush. And every time I advanced a reputation level, I was able to use, because everything here is locked behind another wall, not just the reputation requirements, but they also introduce a new currency, which you earn from doing the same daily quests, amongst other things, which is used to purchase the various different upgrades at each different reputation level. With me so far? Okay. Here's where it broke my spirit. So, once the latest content patch hit, I logged in eagerly, looking to see what was new. Brand new quest area, all kinds of new daily quests, new faction to grind reputation with, new currency to farm. Fantastic. This is basically what I've been doing in World of Warcraft for the best part of the last 7 or 8 years. Immediately started doing daily quests and following the storyline in the new quest area, and after about a week I'd made it from neutral to friendly with the new faction and had accumulated enough of the new currency to almost fully maximise how much I was able to upgrade all of the new catch-up gear that I'd just acquired. Another 2 weeks went by of my logging in and doing almost exactly the same daily quests every day again. Yes, I know, I have a very, very high boredom threshold. And after approximately 2 weeks, I managed to raise my reputation level with the new faction and accumulate enough of the new currency to be able to, again, maximise the amount of upgrades I was able to apply to this new catch-up gear. But now, in order to get to the next reputation level, and therefore the next set of upgrades, I'm looking at a 4-week-long grind, assuming I log in every day and do all of the daily quests every day. And it's here where things started to get a bit emotional, because for the next 4 weeks I wasn't seeing a single gear upgrade. I was just accumulating currency. And about 3 weeks in, I realised that I already had way more of this new currency than I would need to spend in order to fully upgrade all of my gear the second I hit the next reputation level. And that's when I started to get suspicious. But I thought to myself, nah, it'll be fine, because this is the way Blizzard have done this for the last 10 years at least. There will be new upgrades available at the next reputation level. So I knuckled down and I continued logging in every day and doing the daily quests every day. And then after 4 weeks I finally hit the next reputation level. So I rushed to the faction quartermaster after grinding out 12,000 reputation with this faction, and I had more than enough of the new currency to fully upgrade everything that I was wearing twice over. And there were no upgrades available. What? Excuse me? Ein Minuten bitte. I was told there would be upgrades. No, says the faction quartermaster. You have to grind out another reputation level. Only this time, it's 16,000 reputation. So I'm looking at a further 6 weeks, on top of the 4 weeks that I'd already done, with nothing to show for it. And that's the point where I said, fuck you, World of Warcraft. Nope. Ain't nobody got time for that shit. And I haven't logged in since. And that was 3 weeks ago. And I had a fairly disappointing experience with Final Fantasy XIV as well. Although, if I'm being completely honest here, that was my fault, not Final Fantasy XIV's. But that game decided that it knew better than I did how I liked playing MMOs. And yeah, we had a bit of a disagreement there, and I stopped playing Final Fantasy XIV. And so this all more or less sort of happened at around about the time the hype was building for New World, Amazon's new MMO. But unfortunately, I was just completely done with MMOs at that point. So I never bothered with New World, although I know a lot of people who have. I've been watching Mr. Gibbons and Flambass play it on Twitch, but nope, sorry, done with MMOs. But this does kind of bring us back to the subject of New World, and the general theme of this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles, of people doing shady shit to each other online. Because it turns out that despite the fact that New World has only been out, 2 weeks now? People are already scamming the shit out of each other. So let me tell you a little story here about New World. I should say up front that I'm not entirely sure exactly how the mechanics of all this work, because I don't play New World and I haven't really watched that much of other people playing it, but, well, basically just to sum things up. Guilds in New World can fight each other for control of territory. Oh, a guild, by the way, in New World they call them companies. Again, for the benefit of anybody who has never played an MMO before, a guild or a New World company is just a formal collection of players. And one of the things that these guilds or companies can do in New World is declare war against other player companies for direct control over settlements and the countryside around them. Now, if you own a territory, you profit from taxes earned by players trading items or using that territory's crafting stations. Companies without land mostly have to rely on the generosity of their members making donations towards the company's bank reserve. The only problem is companies have to operate on a fairly high level of trust, because there's nothing stopping the company leaders from running off with all of that gold. So, the story goes, on one of New World's servers there was a player company that had just lost a war against another one of New World's factions. Now, because they didn't have any territory of their own, the guild leader began begging all of the players in the company to cough up every last bit of gold they could in order to pay the fee needed to acquire the deed to the last remaining unclaimed zone on the server. Since winning wars obviously wasn't his strong point, this was the company's last shot at owning the deed to the last piece of land that they could get without having to fight other players for it. 200 members of this company donated their own gold into the company's bank reserve, eventually topping it up to the tune of 60,000 gold. Now, obviously, as I've already told you, I don't play New World, so I don't really have any frame of reference to comprehend just exactly how big an amount of gold that may or may not be. But according to people who do play New World, that is a lot of gold. I mean, that is an unimaginably huge amount of gold. It's a lot. And it all went into the guild leader's pockets. He emptied the lot into his personal wallet and then disappeared. Started a new character, transferred all of the money over, then deleted the old guild leader character so nobody could trace him down, and try to get him to explain exactly what he'd done with all 60,000 of the gold that he'd just stolen from what were supposed to have been his friends. Anyway, this story went on to Reddit, was upvoted over 3,000 times, and suddenly lots of other New World players started coming out with very, very similar stories. It turns out that what everybody thought, initially at least, was a one-off, horrific tale of greed, duplicity and treachery, but is in fact happening all the time. Who'd have thought that if you implement mechanics into a game that allows people to steal everything from their guild members that isn't nailed down and then disappear without a trace, and without any threat of recrimination, that people are going to steal everything from their guild members that isn't nailed down and then disappear without a trace and without any threat of recrimination? It's almost as if Amazon don't have the faintest idea how to go about coding an MMO if this sort of thing can happen without the slightest hint of retribution. Ah, but Jingles, said all of the EVE Online players. Maybe they do. Perhaps this is the point, because, well, anybody who's followed the kind of legendary scams that happen in EVE Online, scams that the developers don't necessarily encourage, but they definitely do nothing about, and they leave it up to the players to police themselves, the kind of scams that make what's going on in New World look like somebody stealing your lunchbox. Because, as EVE Online players will tell you, drama sells games. This may in fact be exactly what Amazon wants, because, again, I haven't played New World, but I've heard from New World players that while they are enjoying the experience, there's a serious lack of content. And if a game is somewhat lacking in developer-created content, player-created drama will do. It certainly works for EVE Online. And if this is what Amazon intends, well, time will tell. Although, if it is, I'll have to read about it in the funny pages because I will not be playing New World myself. Like I said, I'm kind of done with MMOs. And I'm also done with this episode of Mingles with Jingles. Remember, very important reminder, Twitch got hacked. If you have a Twitch account, there's an excellent chance that some of your data has been compromised in one way or another. By all means, feel free to take advantage of my Nordpass offer, link down below in the video description. But even if you don't take advantage of that, at the very least, change your passwords, enable two-factor authentication, not just on Twitch, but anywhere else where you use the same password, email address, or log-on credentials. And above all else, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.